Thanks for talking to us today.
Pleasure.
So straight out of the gate, do villains really have more fun, or is it more fun to play them at least?
I think so. There are times when you're sort of being shot or killed at the end of a movie because you're playing the villain and you think, oh, it'd be nice to be the hero, occasionally. But I mean, they're fun to play because there's usually, if you can find justification in why they're doing the things that they do, and they feel three-dimensional, then yes, they're fun to play. If they're just sort of blatantly kind of nasty to keep the movie entertaining, then I probably wouldn't do them. But if I have done anything that's been like that, I kind of think, it's not so much fun.
With villains, there's normally something which drives them, they're a mutant, or their parents left them, or, some kind of desperate secret in their past. What is it with Aldrich Killian which is his driving motivation?
Well, very much. It's a good question, actually, because at the beginning of the film, he's a cripple, he's very bright, has terrible social skills, he's really kind of annoying, but the way in which he sort of handled it has sort of ended up being difficult for people around him to sort of handle, I guess. And so when he comes back as the new improved Killian after taking this particular substance that he's created, he kind of wants to get back at the world a little bit, and at Tony Stark a little bit.
Comic book readers can be amongst the most vociferous and most supportive fans. So when you're approaching the character, did you return a lot to the original source material? Were you steeping it in that, or did you start from afresh?
I pretty much started from afresh. I mean, I looked at the original material, but I didn't want to feel like I was working from two different sources. I think that's the problem with anything you do that's an adaptation. At some point, you've got to let that original thing go, because someone's already done a lot of work to even create the script that you're working on. They've done a lot of editing and filtering and finding the best bits, and I don't want to go through that same process myself in order to get to the point they got to. Even when we did LA Confidential, I did read the book, and actually that was kind of different, but they condensed 8 years of material into one Christmas, New Year period, And in a way, it got a little frustrating reading the book, because I kept thinking, what about this great bit, and what about that great bit, So at a certain point, you do have to jump off and leave it behind.
Do you feel a sense of responsibility when you're picking up something like this, which is such a big franchise and so well-loved?
I do, but not as much of a responsibility that I feel towards myself to just portray a realistic character, And as long as the execs at Marvel think I'm doing okay, then that's fine with me, And I'm sure there are going to be fans out there who are going to go, he's not the actual, he's not exactly how he was or whatever. I don't know, I just think that's the way things have to work sometimes.
There's more than a frisson between you and Pepper Potts, Gwyneth Paltrow's character. Can you give us a little look inside what that love triangle is going to be like, or where that storyline is going?
Well, she used to work for my character years before when Killian was in a different state, and he obviously made some passes at her, and she obviously said no. And now that he's come back in the new improved version, he wants to get her now on board. And I think, there's part of his ego wants to be able to show her who he has become, knowing full well that she kind of might fall for him a little bit. And really, it's a bit of a complex situation, because he really wants to I guess, either get Tony Stark on board or eliminate Tony Stark. And the best way to do it is through her. But at the same time, he is kind of in love with her as well. So I think Killian is kind of out of his depth, and he doesn't quite know how this love triangle is going to turn out. And it does probably end up on a bigger and more strange scale than he even thought it might.
So it's been 20 years this year since you shot Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Yes.
And next year, 20 years since it came to cinemas. So
How will I be celebrating?
Yeah, how will you be celebrating? No.
Well, I thought a trip to the desert on the top of a bus, perhaps, in a silver sequined outfit. How else?
We look forward to that. But what in the last 20 years is the role that really stands out? What has been the one that you've loved, or the one that you've hated, or the one where you've seen it on screen and just thought, this is something I'll always remember?
Oh, look, there's a couple, obviously. I mean, King's Speech, Memento, LA Confidential. Mildred Pierce was a really special experience. Working with Kate and Todd Haynes, just amazing. But I think the proposition just resonates with me more than anything else I've done. The experience we had, but also the finished film and the way in which that film feels so... you feel like you're in it, you really feel like you're in that world. So I just think it's a really successful film on that level.
Robert Downey Jr. brings such a sort of light comic touch, and he's such a charismatic character. Is he as fun to work with as we see in the finished product?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and he's also very chilled, and you know, he's not always kind of hyper, and I mean, pretty much everything he says is clever, but he's not always coming out with genius ideas every 5 seconds. But when he needs to be on set, he's really inspiring to be around, you know. But yeah, he's a funny guy. He's got the crew laughing all the time, so that's kind of nice to be around.
So what are you most looking forward to in the finished product when you're making a film? You know, do you think, I can't wait to see how this is going to turn out?
I just think it's about whether it works, whether, selfishly, whether what I've done actually fits into the world that they've created. And I mean, by all accounts, everything that people at Marvel are telling me is that it has worked. But until you see it yourself, you don't quite know exactly how.
You're nothing more than a maniac. I'm not afraid of you. No politics here. Just good old-fashioned revenge.
Fantastic. Guy Pearce, thank you very much.
No worries. Good to talk to you.